Senator Rubio.
Thank you, Madam President. This issue of high-speed rail is one that I have wrestled and wrangled with for at least the last year and a half. It literally divides the great district that I have the honor of representing. On the one hand, I have constituents who argue that we are finally getting our fair share in the San Joaquin Valley, because the politics often on this floor, despite what the pundits think or want us to believe that it's between Republicans and Democrats, I believe at times it's really about rural California versus urban California. That is what is being shown here again. On the other hand, a very important industry, homegrown advantage to the San Joaquin Valley, that literally feeds the world, is against this project, and that's the agricultural industry. So in studying this issue, in meeting with constituents, in meeting with the governor, in meeting with other colleagues, I want to give some credit where credit is due. I want to thank Senators Simitian, DeSaulnier, and Lowenthal for the work that you did. I also want to thank Senator Doug LaMalfa because of your efforts. The plan that's been talked about already this afternoon is better today than it's ever been. I also want to thank the governor. When we first started getting engaged in this particular subject many, many months ago, I said we lack accountability and transparency at the High-Speed Rail Authority. Let's review the governor's record and what he has done. He replaced the CEO, he replaced the chair of the authority, and he appointed individuals with expertise both in finance and in building large projects. No one can deny that this governor has taken action to get this plan on an appropriate course. To my friends on the other side of the aisle, and to my friends back at home who have texted, called, emailed me many, many times over in the last few days, I put a certain number of terms on the table for the governor and for the authority to review before I could support this particular plan. First, those action items of replacing the CEO and the chair of the authority had to be taken. Second, the accountability measures, the amendments in this, or not the amendments, but the provisions within this bill, brings about the accountability that I think we have lacked in the past dealing with the authority. Second, I promoted the concept of an agricultural czar. Not only are they developing a czar, but they've put together an entire committee that's going to see to it that the agricultural industry is made whole and that the alignment that is eventually adopted and put into place will reduce or, to the greatest extent, mitigate the taking of prime ag land in the valley. Make no mistake, we cannot jeopardize the literal, the industry that feeds this state and this world. But I'm also reminded, many of you know, there was a short, brief time in which I had dreams of going to D.C. So I went on what was supposed to be a short run. My wife gets used to this, and it turned into a long run. But I found myself on the Capitol Mall running, and I reached the monument showcasing Abraham Lincoln, my personal favorite president, who happened to be a Republican. So let's look back at what that fine president did in 1862 in the middle of the Civil War. When you talk about high risk, our nation had never faced a time in its history, nor may it ever face a time in which there was such great risk facing the future, the very fabric of the unity of this great nation. During that time, President Lincoln had the vision. He had the bold courage to see to it that he was going to build the first transcontinental railroad for our nation. I've been told that this project is great, that the vision is good, but it's just in the wrong place. I didn't know the Central Valley became the black hole. We've been called the armpit of the California, but never the black hole before. But let me just remind you of this. Abraham Lincoln embarked to build a railroad connecting two small little communities at the time. One of them named Omaha, and the second, Sacramento. 1 million people lived in that state called California. Nobody even knew what was on the West. Many had never even been there. Yet the president had a bold and courageous vision to see to it that we would get to the West and connect the West Coast to the East Coast. It has been said that we can't afford it right now. Well, thankfully, those who like to base their conclusion on the fact that we can't afford it, they were not around in 1862, because let's look at history. The country was nearly bankrupt. This new concept of paper money had just come out. Pure speculation, great deal of risk, not knowing what this paper money would do to our economy. Inflation was running rapid, yet President Abraham Lincoln decided he was going to invest with little to no private money on building the railroad. In fact, when it reached the Rocky Mountains, because they questioned the plan, the president had to do some legislative maneuvering, and this great president who we know had such a deep faith in God. Critics laughed and said, "Is your faith so deep that Abraham's faith could move mountains?" Well, not only did he move mountains, but he built a railroad over the mountain. Colleagues, if we look at the culmination of the plan to build the railroad, it wasn't overnight. It took decades to plan for it, just like it has for high-speed rail. Colleagues, if we're talking about risk, if we're talking about whether we can afford it, or the issue of the plan and whether it's in the right location, I would ask you to dig deep and look back on one of our favorite presidents, Abraham Lincoln. Stir up the courage for which he had, because history certainly has judged that great president, and I doubt that anybody would argue with me that historians, that you and I, would judge him in a poor manner, because he chose at the country's most difficult time, most difficult financial period, to build the railroad and do something of a bold vision. So, colleagues, on specific issues, it's amazing how we can hear something, and that's been the great debate, and interpret a different way. A colleague said there would be a financial hit this year and next year. I heard finance yesterday say there's no financial hit this year and $70 million next year. It is said that this project is bad because of the lawsuits in the San Joaquin Valley. Well, colleagues, the flaws within CEQA are blind to where you build. You think you won't get sued in the urban areas as well? You will. But I leave you with a quote of that great Republican president, because I think it is very fitting for all of us today. He said within his first 6 months in the White House, he wrote a letter in which he penned, "If I were tried to read, much less answer, all the attacks made on me, this shop might as well be closed for any other business. I do the very best I know how, the very best I can, and I mean to keep doing so until the end. If the end brings me out all right, what's said against me won't amount to anything. If the end brings me out wrong, 10 angels swearing I was right would make no difference." Colleagues, it is true, we rarely get an opportunity to make a vote that will move a project that will last not only for my precious children, but their children and their children. Let's do what is right. It is very difficult. I commend the governor, I commend leadership, and I commend this body for making a product that wasn't good, better, and one in which I can support. Thank you.